for the Jamaican that never worked in Jamaica and they are living overseas, but they want to take part in NHT to actually contribute to the fund, what are their chances of getting an NHT loan? How do they qualify for a loan if they have never paid NHT taxes in Jamaica, but they're living abroad?
Well, the first thing they would have to do is register to become an NHT contributor. And persons, Jamaicans living overseas, we call them our voluntary contributors, and we do allow them to contribute to the fund as well, because we understand persons go abroad for economic reasons and perhaps, have some plans at some point to come back home to Jamaica. And so they can register as voluntary contributors. We have a single form that they are asked to fill out, give us the necessary supporting documentation. And if they have never contributed to the NHT ever at all, then they would become eligible for a loan after 104 weeks, which is roughly 2 years. We understand too that some individuals contributed before leaving Jamaica. So once they contributed for 1 year already, they left Jamaica, they've changed status. They need just to contribute for another 52 weeks, another 1 year before being eligible for a loan. So either groups of persons can benefit. Individuals who have never contributed to the NHT, they can start and become a beneficiary after 104 weeks. Or for the individual who contributed prior to leaving Jamaica, they can resume contributions as well and become eligible for that loan after 52 weeks. And it's the same treatment for our persons abroad. No difference really in treatment between those locally and those abroad, with the difference being what I would have indicated, the eligibility period as it relates to how long before they can access the loan.
All right, great. So let's take them off. So we are giving or contributing for 52 weeks. We're between the ages of 18 to 70. We're contributing to the fund, and we basically tick all those off the list. I find a place, I apply for an NHT housing. What is next? I am going to apply now or come into your office to apply. What is next? What do I need to bring?
So there are certain documents that you need to work with. We move eligibility out the way, as you would have said. So we now look and zero in on the property. And we need to establish first and foremost that this property that you want to buy is value for money. Because remember, it is a loan.
Yeah.
And when you really add up all your contributions that you've made to the NHT, perhaps you'll never come up to 6.5 million that the NHT is lending you, which means I'm lending you somebody else's money as well. And so I, as the NHT, we have to be financially responsible to ensure that the investment that you're making is a sound one, and that you can, make good on this new aspect of the relationship where you're now going to become a mortgager. So we want to see a sale agreement which governs the transaction, which says I'm selling you this house for X amount of money under these conditions. So the NHT wants to see that signed sale agreement. We want other documents to support it, such as a valuation report, which, as its name suggests, speak to the true value of the property. We want as well a surveyor's ID report, which helps to establish boundaries that give you an address at 4 Park Boulevard. That 4 Park Boulevard is actually 4 Park Boulevard. And you would be surprised how many times, persons are buying land or buying a house, and where they think they're buying is not actually where they are buying. It's not that location.
Over into somebody else's land.
Right, and then there are boundaries to the land as well. You need to know where this piece of land starts and stops, because you end up with a breach or an encroachment. That's a very expensive undertaking to carry. So those are some of the documents that we look at based off the type of purchase. There may be some additional documents, and I mean that list can always get longer based on what you're doing. But we always tell persons to smooth out the process, you need the help of an attorney, really. And I know sometimes the cost of purchasing a house is intimidating already, and we try to save as much as possible. but ensure that you don't cut too many corners that it becomes, to your detriment at the end of the day. So an attorney is always a good person to have. If you can't afford an attorney, have someone who can at least review that sale agreement and to ensure that the terms are favorable to you. I know sometimes persons develop little mechanisms, the purchaser and the vendor shares attorney, but let's say a conflict happens. Whose interest does the attorney represent? The vendor or the purchaser?
Whoever pay him.
Caught in the middle, right? And I know sometimes persons say, NHT have lawyers, man. NHT lawyers will make sure NHT's lawyers are looking out for the NHT's interest. And that's not, pardon if I sound selfish, it's not my intention to sound selfish, but the purchaser's lawyer is looking out for the purchaser's interest. The vendor's lawyer is looking out for the vendor's interest.
It's a
The
client
mortgage institution's lawyer is looking out for the mortgage institution's interest.
Exactly.
So you have to ensure that within the transaction, you are protected as well. So you want to get good legal advice, sound legal advice, an attorney with experience in what we call legal conveyancing. So nothing to miss them.
Yes.
The vendor try sneak something through, your attorney should be able to say, no, stop this. No. I mean, generally we say a transaction takes between 90 and 120 days. Your lawyer should be pushing for you to get, the maximum term, 120 days. And I know sometimes it sounds long. You might say, no, man, I go with 60. But I think we need 90.
Yeah.
Then we go with even 60.
You're eager to move in.
But you never know. Exactly. We're eager to get those fees, but you never know what might go wrong. And trust me, that 60 days they pass and the transaction are completed, you start feeling that in your pocket. So you need that kind of guidance. You need that kind of person looking out for you to ensure that, things go according to plan. And if things are not going according to plan, you have somebody on your team who's going to look out for your interests. So your lawyer is a sound person to have.
When I was talking to a real estate agent in last week's video, he mentioned that when you're going to do these real estate purchases or house purchase, make sure to have 10 to 15% of the value of the house, because that's going to cover the closing costs, as you say, valuation report, surveyor's report, and the lawyer fees. So it is best to, even though NHT is going to give you probably the max 6.5%, you should still have money saved up to help you along the way. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Definitely. And I mean, I find sometimes persons start the process and then they hear about these additional costs. And they go, but nobody ever tell me about that, we must get the additional money wrong. Which is why I come full circle from where we start. Research is important. You go in knowing that these fees are a part of the process. And that has nothing to do with NHT. That has nothing to do with the vendor. That has nothing to do with the other mortgage institution. There's stamp duty, there's registration. Those things are universal. They're not even specific or unique to Jamaica. And thankfully, we're having this conversation at a point where we would have seen some of these fees cut seen them cut drastically within the last few years, which has made the process a little bit smoother and easier for persons. And the NHT understands that as well. So the NHT allows you to use what we call your contribution refunds not yet due to offset some of those costs. So every individual contributes to the NHT is eligible for a refund of those contributions after 7 years. NHT holds them for 7 years, they become eligible for refund in the 8th year. So we refund a year at a time. So in this year, 2021, we're refunding contributions made in 2013. However, if you're purchasing a house today, the NHT will make up to 6 years of those contributions available ahead of time to do exactly what we're talking about, which is to offset some of those costs. So you can use the refunds not yet due to assist with the legal fees, to pay for the surveyor's ID, the valuation report, and some of those costs as well.
Okay, so that's good. So But how can you actually access those refunds? Like, if you're contributing to the fund for 2 years, will you even have any refund to use?
We're Jamaicans, and the saying says, "Every meal make a muffle."
Yeah.
So never, never despise whether it's 1 year or 2 years. You never know. In addition to that, the NHT refunds contributions with an interest rate of 2% per annum. So the longer you would have been contributing as well. We like to think of it. I like to think of it really as a savings tool.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not money that is deducted from my salary, paid over to the NHT, and that's the end of the matter. No, it's actually being invested, and I get that back in the eighth year with a return of 14%,
Yes.
actually. And when you think about investment and interest rates at banks in Jamaica, 2% per annum is pretty much right up there, maybe even better
Better.
than what you would get
I'm
had
not
you
gonna give
put
you
that in a
one.
commercial bank, right? So really and truly, it is a savings tool, and we say in house that it's not a tax. It really is a savings instrument that benefits you when you're ready to become a homeowner.
Okay. So I've been asking the question about eligibility. And one thing that I heard people always mention is that if your name is already on an existing title,
Mhm.
you won't be qualified for an NHT loan. What is the substance, or is that true of a statement?
It's not entirely true. Not entirely true because, and let me go to the start. I did say it's a legal undertaking as well as it is a financial one.
Mm-hmm.
And if your name appears on a title, legally, you have claim to that property. And so, by virtue of that, you're generally considered a homeowner. For the NHT, we probe the matter a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
How does your name appear on this title?
Okay.
Did my parents put it on when I was 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old as estate planning purposes and really and truly? My mother house, me not really own it.
You don't really want it
You
because
know,
you move out when you're 18.
exactly. So we can always have a discussion as to, how your name appears on that title. And there are exceptions that the NHC will make to that case. So it's not a hard and fast, your name on a title, you're a homeowner, you can't get a loan. And it really isn't even accurate to say you can't get a loan. What you will get is a homeowner's loan, which is less than the 6.5. You will only get 2.5.
Okay.
However, if there is a reasonable explanation outside of it is my house as to why my name is on that title, the NHT will always have a discussion with the prospective borrower, and we'll work something out there.
Okay, because that makes more sense, because what if you're in a family of six? And most
Right.
of us have the name on the title, but six of us can't share that house. So some of us are going to have to build our own or buy our own.
Right. We look at them on a case by case basis, and we evaluate each case on its own merits and make a decision accordingly.